But whether it's Army, Coast Guard, local forces, it is time for a comprehensive, total attack on this problem to protect the shoreline, to protect the livestock, to protect the wetlands, but most of all, to give the people in that part of our country a sense of hope that this is going to be solved.
Well, that's what you call command presence. There he is. Welcome back to Harbaugh. That was General Colin Powell, of course, giving his prescription for leadership in the Gulf oil spill disaster. Should President Obama adopt the Powell approach? And who in the White House administration is in charge of the oil spill response? Charles Blow is a columnist with the New York Times. Mark Halpert, senior political analyst at Time Magazine. Charles, I want to start with you in your column. It seems to be there's a lot of a unified opinion on this, that there's a lack of a clear command structure, a clear sense of chain of command, that the president doesn't seem to be acting like commander-in-chief of this country. He seems to be acting like a liberal senator from Illinois with opinions but no power. And now your thoughts. Those were mine.
Well, I mean, I guess where I come down on this is that the president has to make a connection, make sure that people know that he feels their pain, make sure people know that he is connected to them and their frustration and their anger and their, in some cases, you know, in Louisiana, I'm from Louisiana, a bit of panic about the situation. And what we keep getting a president when those issues arise who seems to distance himself. And I kind of, you know, I don't really break with the group who says, you know, that he doesn't like emotion because it's, you know, he's more logical and he's more cerebral, because he loves emotion when he's evoking emotion, when it's about hope and change, and when it's on that end of the spectrum, he loves it. It's just that he doesn't connect as well when it's on the other side of the spectrum, when people are hurting. And I think that is a real problem for him, and I think that he has to get to the point where he's not wading out into the middle of the water and realizing he hasn't done enough on issue after issue, whether that be health care, whether that be the Gulf disaster, and then trying to backpedal, because then it looks like you're trying to save yourself for political reasons, and that doesn't go over well either. And I'm not exactly sure what his thinking is, you know, on this particular issue, particularly the people of southern Louisiana. Even during Katrina, he said he was going to make that a big priority. When he finally got around to going to Louisiana, to New Orleans, he was there for such a short period of time, they were calling it the Daiquiri Summit. He flew back out of there and went to a fundraiser. This time he went down again, picked up a few tar balls off a beach, and flew back to vacation. I mean, at some point, he has to be smart enough to realize that he has to do better by the people of South Louisiana, or you're going to get to the point where you're going to have a Kanye moment where somebody's going to say, President Obama doesn't care about Bayou people.
Let me go to Mark Halpert, the excellent author of the excellent book, Game Change. Is this a game change for him, what's happening right now?
Well, it may be. I think he's got a problem as long as the oil's flowing. But I really respectfully and strongly dissent from the view that the president's not doing enough. I've long thought, as many of our colleagues have, that he may not always be connecting emotionally as possible. But from the first days of this, as best I can tell, the administration has put a lot of focus on it. They were onto it before the White House press corps was onto it as a big story. They put a lot of resources down there. There's now someone clearly in control. I think that Allen should have been more obviously in control early on. Carol Browner, Robert Gibbs. This is getting no shortage of attention substantively, but there's not much they can do. The president could give the best speech of his life. As long as the oil's flowing, they have got a problem.
Should the president have left BP as the primary instrument of fixing this problem? Left them to do it?
There's no
first, Mark.
There's no indication that they had any other choice but to do that. I think they should have figured out a way, again, just optically, to distance themselves from BP before this weekend. I think that was a PR mistake. But every expert I've heard says the same thing. BP has to be the one who mechanically tries to solve the problem under the supervision and direction of the federal government.
Yeah, let me share with you a memory, guys, and maybe it's relevant. I think it is, that back on the Sunday before the 1980 presidential campaign, I was flying around with President Carter. And I think what happened to the Carter presidency when he was in a very tight race with Ronald Reagan, it was a very close race to the very end. And on Sunday, right before the election, we sat there and waited for the mullahs to change their mind or make up their mind on releasing the hostages. And it became crystal clear to everybody, Democrat, Republican, undecided, that the mullahs were in charge and that Jimmy Carter was impotent. He had no control over the situation. He was waiting for them to do what they felt like doing. At that moment, my hunch is the American people said, this president can't do anything. The mullahs are making all the decisions. If BP is the latter-day mullahs and they're making all the decisions and all he is an observer, I think people want the chief of state. to do something. Your thoughts, Charles, then Mark.
Well, that's I agree, and I agree with Mark on the point that there may not be much more that they could have done. I'm not laying this on the president's fault, the blame for the spill on the president at all. It is the way the response is handled that creates the political danger for the president. You know, the fact that we don't have anyone that we recognize. Thad Allen, great. Seems like he's doing a great job. That's not someone that I recognize as part of the Obama team. The fact that there's no face of the Obama team that goes out to a microphone every day and updates us on what's happening. What we get is information from BP, which we now realize we can't trust anything that BP is saying. They keep changing, you know, to a point they kept changing how much oil they thought was actually being pumped out of that pipe. Then they come up with a new catchphrase, a clever little name for some little trick they're going to try, and it fails. Well, I don't trust that anymore. I want to hear someone that I trust from this administration to come to a microphone and say, this is what is happening now.
Charles, who would do that?
Let me ask you about, would in the old days, Jim Baker for George Bush Sr. would have been the guy out front. He would have been basically the COO of this operation. Does the president need to name a COO, someone who speaks for him day to day, who is, in fact, the operating engineer here, the operating executive? What do you think, Mark?
He's been named. It's been Thad Allen for a while.
But he's not an Obama guy.
Well, yes, he is. I mean, he's been designated by the president. Everybody seems to think he's got the right take charge public image. He's got expertise, and he's got experience in the region. So I think he's a pretty good choice. I think they should have elevated him more substantively, or not substantively, but symbolically earlier. But I think this is the same problem the administration has on the economy, too. They throw a lot of people at it. They're very high on Carol Browner now going out and speaking as well. Robert Gibbs speaks on it. I think that is a problem, the same as I say on the economy. I don't want the President of the United States down there every day. He's got more to do than just this. This is a huge problem, but it has received a huge amount of his attention in private. He's a substance guy. He's a rational guy. He's putting a lot of brain power on how to solve it. But I say again, until the well is capped, he's got a problem that no amount of PR is going to solve.
Gentlemen, last question. Should the president be exploring, as president of the United States, alternatives to relying on BP? Should he be shopping with MIT, with the other oil companies around the world? Should he be going to the smartest people in the country in terms of engineering? Not eggheads with Nobel Prizes, but people that know how to fix engineering challenges, Red Adair types. Should he be going off looking for those people or just relying on BP? You first, Mark.
My inner Dennis Kucinich says absolutely. He cannot trust BP, which is a for-profit company, to do stuff in the public interest.
Is he doing it? Is he going out looking for alternatives to BP's know-how? That's what we don't know.
I think
Charles, do we know that?
Yeah.
Do we know if he's out there looking?
Today I saw a report that they've called in James Cameron to help to consult about how to get it stopped. I mean, I think they're talking to everybody.
He's a movie maker.
I know, but they call him in to talk to him. But he was in one of the planning meetings. I think they're talking to everybody. But I think the problem is that doing it at the end of the process is a problem. We have to set up a situation where
it's not the end, Charles.
Well,
it's the beginning, and it's not even the beginning of the end. It's not the end of the beginning. We got months and months and months of this ahead of us, unless cut and cap works. And basically, Plan D doesn't look much better than Plan C, although I have no idea. It's just a depressing, disastrous situation for this country. We're destroying part of our national habitat here, and nobody seems to know what to do about it. And that is the scariest thing I've seen. Jack Kennedy once said, the problems of man are man-made. They can be solved by man. We created this problem. God didn't, and we ain't been able to solve it. And that is pretty darn depressing for most people watching the show right now. And we're hoping our president can do a better job than BP.